Mike Hansen, Golf Digest 50 golf fitness trainers in America. I reached out to Mike. I love what he does. He's got great content to help golfers. You may not know him. Golf is one of my passions. I enjoy it. I play it often. Maybe not as much as I'd like, or maybe too much, but I really enjoy golf. But Mike does a great job of talking about the fitness. He's not a swing coach; he's a fitness instructor, and he shows you exercises on his YouTube, on his social media, on his website. He's in Orange County in California, and he gives lessons and instruction on how to stretch. The most important joint in golf, everybody. What is that? Your hips. Your hips. Your hips are the most important. They've got to fire. Your core fires the hips. Probably not doing a good job explaining that. No, I'm definitely not doing it. That's why we have Mike Hansen. Really enjoyed talking to Mike. We go through some of the strange things you do to kind of fire those, and how he does assessments with his clients, and the golf motion, how complex it is, and it's a great conversation. I really enjoy this discussion and these nerd kind of talking points about golf. I really enjoy it. I know you will as well. His view on discipline, very interesting. The perspective of a trainer about setting goals. Great conversation with Mike Hansen. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, and their passion, and their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Mike Hansen, thank you so much for doing this. Very excited to talk to you. I'm glad you accepted this. In golf? We're talking about golf here. Golf fitness instructor, an excellent one, highly decorated. Mobility versus flexibility. What's the difference?
So I mainly say the mobility is the range of motion in your hips, or I'm sorry, your joints, and then the flexibility is more in the having a little bit more mobility in, or more range of motion in the bigger muscles. So like your hamstrings, not flexible, but mainly the mobility of the joints is most important for the golfer.
And of course, that can vary depending on so many factors, age, just flexibility itself. And I mean, that's really, you say that the hips are the most important joint.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I like to say I've seen them all, every different type of body. I got older guys who you'd think would be very mobile and flexible that aren't, and then you have other people that are, that you look at and you're like, oh man, you think they're pretty tight, and then they become a little bit more mobile. So, the hips, and whenever the big talk now is distance and speed and all that.
Yeah.
And if you can't move your hips, it's a long process.
And I remember talking to somebody about the physicality, the difference of men and women generally. I see if you agree with this. Men are stronger but tighter, and women are less strong but more flexible.
Correct. That's the general speaking. Yeah, but there's always, there's always those few
Always.
people that throw you off, and yeah. So yeah, generally speaking, men are typically more. They're stronger. They're just more dense and sound, and women are a little bit more mobile and it can move a little bit better, and not as strong. So when it comes to handling a golf club, it's tougher.
It's definitely different. So you're a golf fitness uh coach. You're not swing. You're just all fitness for you, correct?
Yeah, I always tell people I'm dangerous enough to teach a swing, but I don't. And the main reason is because I built my business through golf instructors, and and the last thing I want to do is change somebody's golf swing, and when they go back to their instructor, they're like, "Oh, my fitness coach said, I should change the plane here," and then that's the last person I'll ever see from that coach. So, the main reason is I know I have enough knowledge of the golf swing to understand what the body's doing and to help it that way. But I work hand in hand with a lot of golf instructors, and I'm just basically trying to make their job easier.
You know, I play a lot as we talked about before, and I often play with, higher handicaps, and they're asking me for, tips and things like that. And I said, "Look, I respect the instructors way too much. I continue to take lessons now. I take them all the time, and I know my swing pretty well. I certainly can't hazard to guess yours, and I can't imagine me giving them some advice and then them going to an instructor and say, 'Hey, this is what Joe said.' I mean, I'd feel horrible. So I stay away from it. I just tell them ambiguous things like, just hit the ball. Well, yeah, just hit it. Pick a place and hit it, and just try to get them to focus on that versus all mechanics."
Yeah, it's the analogy that I always use is a golf instructor that's seen a million swings. They know the one or two things to say to somebody that's going to help
Mm.
them quickly. It's for me like the hardest thing for me is getting somebody to learn how to squeeze their butt cheeks or their glutes. And most people don't have control, but I've done it so long that I have five keys or cues that I give them, and I know the first one is 90% are going to get it. And if they don't get it, I can go on to the next one and the next one until, my last one is, you got bad gas and you're standing in an elevator with one other person. So, but that's the thing is with a golf instructor that's seen a million different swings, they can say like, change your grip and from my point of view, I don't feel comfortable enough changing somebody's grip, changing their
Mm.
swing path or something like that. And I've always said that if you took me and a golf instructor and looked at the swing, I'm going to look at what the body's doing, and the golf instructor is going to look at what their hands and the
Uh,
plane and the club is doing. So I think that's the biggest difference.
yeah, you mentioned about being in an elevator and gas. There's one of your great videos where you're talking about working the glutes, and you make the analogy of kind of holding a fart in.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody understands it, and
Right.
I don't
We
go
all
there.
do it.
I don't go there first, but I enjoy when I work with kids. I always use that one because I try to make it light and make it comfortable
Sure.
for them, and then like people act like, oh, I don't know what that means, but everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah, we all do it. But you mentioned, let's go over those 5 cues. You've got such great content, Mike, on your site and your YouTube. You go through videos and you're meticulous. You have a whiteboard on some of them, or what to do off season, and you go through the exercise and you have people there. It's great, great content. But those 5 cues are really important.
For squeezing the glutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is I lay them on their back and try to get them to pelvic tilt. Um, so they're moving their hips, and when they do it, they have to squeeze their glutes and push their lower back into the ground. And that's cue number one. Most people get it from there. And then if I
Mm.
can't get that one, I'll have them straighten out their legs, because if the hip flexors are turned on or flexed, then you can't. It's be like trying to flex your bicep and your tricep at the same time.
Hmm.
So then I'll straighten their legs out, and then I'll give them either I'll push on their feet, trying to push their feet out to activate the glute medius and see, because most of the time when people are pushing out using the glute medius, they'll fire the whole glutes. And then if I can't get it, then I'll get them. I'll put a band around their ankles and have them try stepping to the side. And then my last one is the gas.
So the hips are the most important, but the glutes fire the hips. Is that a good
Yeah.
analogy?
So every joint. So if you think about the way the body's made, it's a mobile, stable pattern. So the ankle's a mobile joint designed to move every which way. The knee is only designed to go to flex and extend. The
Mm.
hip is goes every way. The lumbar spine, which a lot of people think rotates, it's only made to go forward and backwards.
Mm.
And then the thoracic spine is where we get all our movement from. So and then the best or good analogy is the shoulder. So the shoulder is a very mobile joint, but the elbow is only designed to hinge. So if somebody is trying to force their shoulder through a range of motion it can't make, the elbow has to try and twist when it's not made to twist. And so that's why I always say, if all we do is move forward and backwards and linearly, we can get away with tight mobile joints. But once we start to rotate, those mobile joints, if they're too tight, they will affect the joint either below it, the stable joint below it, or above it. And so each mobile joint has a stabilizer. So the glute is the stabilizer of the hips. So what happens is if you can get the glutes, the big muscle, to stabilize the hips, the other muscles that are just made to abduct or adduct or move the hip can do their job. But if the glutes aren't doing it, those little small muscles are trying to do the work of the glute.
Hmm.
If that makes sense. So same thing like rotator cuff. Those are very small little muscles, but if you don't have the stability in the upper back to stabilize the shoulder, those rotator cuff muscles are overworked. So that's the hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, you do a really good job of explaining it as well here and in the video. So when you have a client, a student that just maybe they're carrying some extra weight, whatever the reason is, they don't have that flexibility. Do they stretch? Do they learn? Do you tell them? How do you work with them?
So I've always said it's a lot easier to get somebody stronger than it is to get them flexible. And with mobility, there's sometimes we're just not going to get it. But the reason it's so hard is because people have to do it every day. They have to incorporate some type of flexibility routine in order to make that progress, because you're not going to you just can't stretch a muscle and all of a sudden it works well. There's a lot of times you have to strengthen the opposing muscle to help
Mm.
stretch the so if you're trying to get more hamstring flexibility, it may be the quadricep in the front of the leg that's not allowing that knee to fully extend and stretch the hamstring. So um, the biggest thing is having people stretch on their own. And to improve the flexibility, I like dynamic stretching for before golf or before a workout, but I like the static stretching where you're holding a stretch more towards the end of the workout, and kind of I call them the feel good exercises. So but it's there's a lot of different ways we go about it. We do the foam rolling to try and break up the fascia tissue, and then that will help you stretch more. And there's so many things that go along with flex, like hydration is important. If somebody's
Mm.
dehydrated, they're not gonna get much mobility. Um, and it's just got to be a consistent thing that they do day after day.
Does nutrition play a factor?
Um, Hydration does.
I see.
I'm not I'm again, it's just kind of like the golf swing. I know nutrition, but I most of my clients, I've gotten people that hey, do you do food routines? And I can. Most of my clients aren't here for weight loss. It's
Mm.
a nice um, bonus to exercise, but the reason I got into golf specific fitness is I was training weight loss people, and they have to do it on their own. I can give them the tools, but I can't be with them all the time. So I would notice when I started training golfers, I'm like, hey, if you do this stretch, you can gain 10 yards, and
Mm.
they're doing it 10 times a day, and it makes me look really good because I'm like, they're like coming back and they're really flexible and they're getting more mobile, and because they're doing it on their own because they're motivated by that extra 10 yards. So that's what I figured is if I can get a golfer to do what I'm asking them, they're going to do it over and over. They're going to overdo it
Hmm.
because they want that to get better on the golf course.
Strange irony there is that the golfer wants to get more distance and get better versus just being healthy and not overweight. It's
Well, maybe it came out wrong.
I know what you mean.
That's not their initial goal.
Right.
The number one answer I get when I ask what their goal is number one is consistency, being more
Right.
consistent, and number two is more distance, and then number three is to get rid of pain. So, yeah, usually the weight loss isn't a priority for them.
And disciplines that you do is relatively new, right, Mike? Because the modern golfer looks a lot different than the golfer 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, so I started in 2005 is when I opened my first one, and people told me I was crazy. They said,
Right.
that if you're gonna do a just golfers, you got to find another market or something. And so I like I said earlier, I grew up in Indiana, and I didn't really play golf until I was 19, and so when I moved out here, there is there's a country club. There's probably 10 country clubs in a 15-mile radius.
You're in
And
Orange County now, by the way.
yeah, and what I noticed is people will do whatever it takes
Yeah.
to get better at golf, and they have the time and they have the money to do it. So
Hmm.
and then what's happened is Titleist Performance Institute started doing a fitness show on the Golf Channel. They had a 30-minute segment on Tuesday nights, and that really opened the eyes to the public. And it just kind of ballooned from there. And now there's golf fitness people everywhere.
There are more than ever, which is I think it's a good sign because I think you have to be fit. I mean, we will point to Tiger Woods, the greatest ever, arguably. Uh, he was extremely fit and muscular and flexible, and look what he did.
Yeah, yeah, and he definitely. I mean, whatever Tiger, he can't do any wrong really in the golf world because
Right.
whatever he does, everybody follows still to this day. If so, yeah, he was. A lot of people say Gary Player, but it was,
Mm,
and he was always. I don't think he was as outspoken as he when he
right.
was doing it. It was kind of his secret. And then you got Tiger that everything he did was public, so they saw hitting it farther, swinging faster, and it just kind of took it. He's changed the game for a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
different areas.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, you mentioned Gary Player. Yeah, he was a strong advocate of. Well, he wore all black, and he thought that was, kind of in the sun. But he did a lot of push-ups, and he really emphasized fitness. Perhaps he's the kind of pioneer in golf.
Yeah, I've seen some videos or pictures of him tying a pulley to a tree with the weight on the
Right.
other side and mimicking his golf swing. And so yeah, yeah, I think he's definitely one of the first ones that really looked at it like as a physical sport, and he could improve his game by getting stronger.
And then you have kind of the one-offs or the exceptions, like kind of the John Daly's were really big, and one of his big famous quotes are he did lose weight at one point, and then he said he couldn't swing, he couldn't get the distance anymore or something. But he was still very flexible, though. Correct?
Yeah, yeah. If you look at his swing, it almost touches his shoe with his backswing. But yeah, and then you look at a guy and you just can't judge his book by its cover because
Right.
you know it, some people are just made more flexible, and he's been able to use that to his advantage. And there and there's a Craig Stadler did the same thing. He was a heavier
Mm,
guy and he lost
yeah.
weight, and he said I can't swing the club anymore. So, if you ingrain that move and then you get rid of some mass that you can't, so it could backfire. But I think you're better off trying to get in shape than to just play around a belly or
Yeah.
something like that.
I think the quote from John Daly was, "You can't pull fat." Meaning you can't pull
Yeah,
your
yeah,
swing.
I think I heard that one too. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, a golfing term meaning for hitting it way if you're right-handed, hitting it way left, you're pulling the ball. You have a great video on, off season, and you're on a whiteboard, and you're so
Yeah.
you really break it down well, Mike. And you're on a whiteboard, and you first talk about injuries and activation and mobility, but you really have to start with the injuries to address that before doing anything off season.
Yeah, I I try to golf is one of the few sports, especially here in Southern California, you can play it
Yeah.
all year round. So, and I know that I've picked up a lot of followers in the colder climates, and so doing off season, there's I kind of break it down where there's off season, there's preseason, there's in season, and there's postseason.
Huh.
So, so a lot of times people will play in the let's say they're playing in the summertime in their club championships or whatever, and they might go around an injury or take some extra Advil just to be able to play. But then once those tournaments are done or the weather breaks, then once you get into the gym, it's important that if you're having any aches or pains that are caused from your golf swing, it's important to address those first. And because they're just going to come back. If you don't,
Mm.
it's like a band-aid. You know, if like somebody says my back hurt, I would say 80% of the people that I see their back doesn't hurt because their back is the problem. Their back hurts because their hips aren't moving, or their shoulder turn isn't moving, or their core is not strong enough. And so that's the main thing, is addressing the reason why it hurts and not the spot that hurts.
It's really important, isn't it? And you
Yeah,
talked
because
about, sorry.
sorry, I was just going to say, yeah, because it's just going to be a nagging injury year after year if you don't address it. It's just going to come back once they start swinging the club again.
And aren't a lot of back issues because you don't have strong core?
It could be. I mean there's different. So there's some people have degeneration of
Mm.
the lumbar spine, but I think what we're seeing now is so many people are sitting for a lot
Right.
longer than they normally do. I was just kidding with a client the other day about everything we do in life is everything invented is made to make things easier or to
Yeah.
move less. Like everything is made to move less. So I think we see a lot more people sitting, and what happens is the hip flexors in the front of the hips are always flexed and on, and
Mm.
what happens is it pulls the pelvis forward this way, so your butt's sticking out and your stomach's sticking out. So it puts stress on the lumbar spine.
Interesting.
So having stronger core or having some type of abdominal development will help kind of offset that and protect the back. But for the most part, it's the hip joint that doesn't move, and then the lumbar spine is trying to make up for it by rotating, which it's not supposed to. And then the muscles tighten up, then it pinches nerves, and there's the pain.
Mm. And you have to really listen to your body, right? You have to hear what it's saying when you're injured like that, or when things hurt.
Yeah, you'd be surprised though. People they'll do whatever it takes to get through it. I have
Mm.
I've been, had the pleasure of or the opportunity to play at different country clubs, and I always laugh when I'm at the locker room and I see this big bottle of Advil sitting
Ha!
right on the edge of the locker room on the way out.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, you definitely have to, because if you're not moving well, there's just that split second that the ball makes contact with the club, and if it's not in that little spot, it's you don't know where it's going to go. And so
Mm.
many times, like, you'll hear people play the exact same club and they might shoot 85 one day and 75 the next day, and sure, you get a couple good bounces or make a few putts, but I think it's how your body's feeling that day and how it's moving, because
Hmm.
there's some days where you just wake up stiff, or you know maybe had a long night the night before, and it just your body doesn't move as well as it did.
Are there any advantages to walking the course versus being in a cart?
I
Physical?
I think so. I If you can, I would suggest walking, because
Mm.
I didn't do it for a long time, and then I had a guy that from Ireland that moved here to work with me, and in Ireland they don't drive
Right.
carts. He was like, I walk everywhere, and so I tried it, and I'm like, man, this is awesome. I think it keeps you moving, it keeps you warm. Um, I look at it another workout,
Mm.
and I think if your goal is to go out and just have a recreational fun day with your buddies, I think a cart might be the answer. But if you want to get good, if you want to get better at golf, and you want to improve your game, and there's a mental side of walking too, that you're by yourself, you're walking, most of the time you're just walking by yourself to your ball. You don't have anybody. A lot of people have music now, but usually in
Sure.
the carts they got music, and or they're driving up. So I think there's a physical advantage because it keeps your muscles warm, it keeps you moving the entire time, and I think there's a mental advantage to it too, because you're just kind of, you're in your own head and you're in your own game. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not. So, yeah.
Yeah, I prefer to walk. I generally walk every time we play. For the winter, I'm here in the western coast of Florida. The problem is a lot of the courses these days are being built with long distances between the holes, and so it slows down play. And a lot of the newer courses don't really let you walk for pace of play, which is a travesty, I feel. So I really enjoy walking, and I had hurt my shoulder, but it's much better now. So I'm actually going back to carrying as well. So that's an additional kind of benefit. Correct?
Yeah, just from a personal experience, I when I started walking, I was carrying, and I during when COVID hit, I'm like, what am I going to do? So I just, and like everybody else, the only thing that you could do was play golf. So I
Right.
was I was playing a lot and carrying my clubs, and that's my back started hurting me,
Mm.
and so I was telling one of my clients, and he was nice enough to, he gave me one of his push carts. So I I I would rather push the cart if I can. Some people, like a lot of the kids that I work with, it's not cool to push a cart.
Well, they're
they need to
kids.
carry. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, high
yeah.
school boys aren't gonna be seen pushing a
Good.
push cart.
That's
So
a good thing.
yeah, so yeah, I think if I think it's good to start with the push cart if you're going to walk,
Yeah.
and then graduate. Or, the other thing, if you can find somebody that wants to be in a cart, you just say, like, let that guy cart carry your
Mm,
clubs with
mm.
the cart, and you just walk to your ball. So there's different ways to get around it. So, and I know there are those long green to tees that kind of cut back on that too.
It's terrible. I try to carry at least once or twice a week, and then I push a cart for the rest. And then, heck, these days you don't even need to push the cart. You can get one of those electronic ones, right, and carry
Yeah,
the
as long
little
as you don't
controller in your hand.
as long as you don't run
Yeah,
it into the pond.
that's right. Yeah, I've seen that where it's ahead of them, and the remote control didn't stop working because it was out of the
Yeah.
Bluetooth range or whatever, and it just ends up uh, in a pond. So you get to play a lot as well. So you're not just a fitness coach, but you actually play often.
Well, I wouldn't. I don't play as much as I'd like to. I have
Mm.
three young kids,
Ah,
and a business. So it's right now what we do is we go out at sunrise on Sunday morning, and we either, depending on what we got planned that day, I play with a buddy of mine, and we either play 9 or 18. But we're out, and it's growing up in Indiana, when we were playing, if it was, we'd wait till it was like 60 or 50, maybe 60. And then that was crazy, I thought. But out here in Southern California, it's been in the 40s a few times when
I
we're out
heard.
there. And so yeah, but it by the second or third hole, it's getting warmer. But yeah, I try and play. I'd like to play more, obviously, but I play at least once a week. So I'm getting better.
Yeah, I play early too. I have meetings all in I schedule my meetings afterwards. I'm on the East Coast. I pretty much work,
Hmm.
Pacific hours, and I just layers, right, Mike? I mean, if it's chilly, you start peeling off second and third hole, and you see,
Yeah.
it's been so hot here in the area that I've actually had to wear kind of sleeves. It's been really, really hot. You got to watch for sun protection. Should everybody should every golfer look to have someone like yourself, a golf fitness instructor?
I don't think they necessarily need a fitness instructor. I do think that's what I just made a video the other day. Sorry, about I said stop watching YouTube for
I
swing
saw that.
tips or
Yeah.
fitness tips, and the reason I did that is because I have clients come in, and I'm like, "What are you working on in your swing?" They're like, "Oh, I watch this YouTube video." I'm like, "But is it what they need?" And I fell in that trap too. As I would every time a client would come in, I'd say, "What are you working on with your instructor?" And they'd be like, "Oh, I changed my grip," and I'm like, "Oh, maybe I should try that," but it's not for me, it's for them. So my thing in that video was find out what you need help with and then go find the video that that you need. So like if I recommend having somebody do a physical assessment on everyone. I think everyone should have a some type of physical assessment to figure out where their tightness is. Because I just had a college player come in the other day and he's been stretching and stretching and stretching. I said, "You don't have a flexibility problem, you have a stability problem where
Mm.
you're not able to stabilize the joint, and that's why your lower back is you're in so much pain, is because you're just not strong enough." You have He had incredible flexibility, almost too much flexibility. So
Wow.
he didn't know, and he's been doing all this stretching and stretching, and they have, they have places where they can go on campus where they don't have to pay for it for physical therapy, and so he found out it was a stability thing, and so now he's starting to make progress on getting stronger. So I think everyone should understand where their limitations are, and then if they have the discipline to do it
Mm.
on their own, they don't need somebody like me. But if they I think the 80% of the reason personal trainers are in business is because the accountability they hold. And I've had people like my whole goal is to teach somebody what they need to do and then get them to do it on their own.
Mm.
But there's those people that they tell me, if I don't pay you, I'm not going to work out. So I'm paying you. So I'm going to be here. So that's the difference. I think having the knowledge of what you need to work on, and then if you can work on it on your own, if you had the discipline and the motivation, then yes, you can do it on your own. But if you need that accountability, then I think you should find somebody that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a trainer. Once you find out what you need to do, it could be a buddy. It could, you could find a friend that you can work out with. You can find an accountability partner, we call them.
Accountability partners are huge in so many in business and yeah, and fitness. And you mentioned stop watching videos. 20, maybe even 30 years ago, we'd have all the magazines and they'd give tips and people would read them and it would just mess them up. And like right, there's so many videos. Like, if you're coming over the top, do this. I mean, I don't come over the top, so it doesn't apply to me, but people will kind of hear that. When I take lessons, generally my instructor says, "What bad habit have you picked up that we need to break?"
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And that, it's because you hear something, you see something. Wow, I'm not doing that, and then you overdo it, and then next thing you know, you've created something, something. It's hard to break. Golf
Mm.
is so fickle, Mike, and but it keeps me up at night, and I love it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. There's so much love hate, and that.
Yeah, it really is. So, on the podcast, we alluded to it a couple times. I always bring up, I started my business. I gained a lot of weight. Doctor said I wasn't going to see my daughter graduate, and so I changed everything I did, and I lost a bunch of weight. And people always ask me how I did it, and I just say discipline. I mean, how does discipline play a role in your life, Mike?
Well, like I told you earlier, I thought I signed up for a 10 a.m. and and it was actually 7 a.m. out here in the.
Yeah, Pacific
So,
time.
but what I like to do before I do something like that, or if I go speaking, I like to get a workout in before, just kind of clears my mind. And so I had to get up at 4 o'clock this morning to get in and get my
Whoa.
workout in before
Thank you.
I came on here. So, I, it's like for me, I lost over the last year and a half. I've lost almost 40 pounds,
Wow.
and there's so much information out there, and what worked for me, and it's always about what works for you and you personally and what you can adapt to. But I did intermittent fasting where I just stopped eating from 8 p.m. to noon the next day, and I found it easy because I didn't have to find a diet food or something like that. So I think discipline is setting little, for me, telling myself I'm going to do things and then do them. And
Hmm.
then I don't know, there's a guy, Ed Milet, that he's has a pretty famous, or not famous, a pretty big podcast. And I hear him say this a lot, of setting little goals for yourself that you're going to do, because if you don't do it, it's going to pull you the other way.
Mm.
So and then having I guess a reward at the end. It does, like if you're doing a big project, working hard, and then maybe you have a vacation planned afterwards, or the little discipline things, like I'm gonna not hit snooze this morning. I mean, it could be as simple as I'm gonna drink 20 ounces of water in the morning, and then I'm gonna do it, and then compounding those in day after day is where you're gonna see the results. I think with weight loss, the hardest thing is it may take you a little bit of time to see results, and most people don't stick with it long enough. They're like, oh, I messed up, or and setting too lofty of goals where you're like, okay, I'm gonna start going to the gym 7 days a week this month, and then you miss one, and then you're like, okay, I missed one, but you missed two, and then you're like, oh, forget it, didn't work. So I think with self discipline, it's setting little goals that you're going to compound, and just keep going bigger and bigger on those goals as you reach them. So I think that's the main thing, is just because it could backfire if you set too big of goals too. You just it starts spiraling in the wrong way, and the discipline is not there.
Mm. Yeah, I know what you mean by when I made up my mind to lose the weight, I didn't tell anybody. I just did it. I just changed everything I did, and I worked out. But again, if I had a relapse or something, you know, I didn't want to blame myself. All right, let's get back on the horse. And still, there's still a 340-pound guy inside of me, Mike, trying to get out. I still feel it, and it's you got to people. I don't know what the number is. 95% of people who lose a lot of weight gain it back, right? So the way you attribute goal setting to discipline is very interesting, and make the goals, the SMART goals, right? The specific, measurable,
Mm,
accurate,
attainable,
yeah,
I think is the
attainable, yeah, realistic and timely, yeah, yeah. Make sure they're SMART goals, and that's a really great take. Have you always had that view on discipline as goal setting?
Yeah, I made a few videos a couple of years ago on that, and I just kind of figured it out myself, because I was that person that said, okay, this this month I'm gonna go to the gym every day, and then you miss a couple, and you're like, forget it, didn't work.
Mm,
So then I started, okay, I use a there's so many trackables now there. I really
mhm,
I challenge myself. So last April, I think I got the Apple Watch. I always used the Fitbit, but then the Apple Watch had, you have to get 30 minutes of exercise a day. So I challenged myself to I was going to fill that. It's this little circle that goes around. I was going to fill that circle every day in the month. And then I realized there's just some days you there's just some days you need a day off.
right.
But with the I've learned tricks around it. But then it was like, okay, I'm gonna fill that thing 25 days a month. So then I gave myself a couple days that I could miss it, or but it kind of backfires, because one day, and I wear a heart rate monitor too, a different one, and one day I didn't have it, so I'm like, I'm not even gonna work out because it's not gonna count. But
Mm.
it depends on if you I like to challenge myself to do things, and the more little wins you have along the way, I think the more momentum you can gain with that. So and I'm sure a lot of people, but I talk to myself, quite often, and setting goals and things that I want to accomplish. And there's a lot of days that my to-do list did I forgot to even look at it.
Mm.
And then okay, and then it's going to pile up the next day, and so I've learned too with lists is the top three, and that's it. If that's all you get done that day, then you're good to go. But if you make a list of 20 things, and you're just setting yourself up for failure on that. So I think it's gaining the momentum of little wins along the way is what will kind of steamroll that momentum. and then being
Yeah,
able to pick it back up right away if you get derailed.
yeah, very important. You said something really important too is to celebrate you win. A lot of times we achieve a goal and we just kind of move on. But just take a moment to, I don't know, high five, however deep you want to celebrate. But it's important to be, recognize or take a moment that you did achieve that.
Yeah, I think you have that vision of what it's going to be like.
Mm.
What it's going to be like when I remember standing on the scale and pushing myself up just to see what the number would look like. And then okay, and then but it's completely different what might I envisioned then and what it is now. So but yeah, it's I think it's just feeling there's a lot of different things that go along with that discipline and there's having people around you that support you and so it's there's a lot of momentum makers and a lot of momentum breakers, and having
Mm.
more momentum makers is going to be the thing that gets you over that edge.
Yeah, the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, bring others.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And I've got a friend who, who's trying to lose weight, and he calls it his discipline 50. He does 50 of something every day. It could be 50 push-ups, it could be 50 sit-ups, it could be walk for 50 minutes. Just the number 50, he does something in the physical spectrum 50 times. And that's very attainable because if you could just do 50 steps if you want. The idea is to do something and he just has to hit that 50 every day. Again, whatever works for you, make it happen.
That's right. Yeah, it has to work for you, and that's everybody's like, oh, how'd you do that? What'd you do? But I'll tell you how I did it, but will it work for you? I don't know. And it doesn't have to be as far as weight. I don't know your exact story on how you lost the weight, but it doesn't have to be so die hard dramatic.
Yeah,
Like
regimented. Yeah.
yeah, and it could be where like I started out where I didn't eat from 8 to noon the next day, Monday through Friday, and then and I kept that, and I'd have a few beers on the weekend.
Yeah.
And that's the reward, that you could eat a little bit more on Sundays, or you pick one day where you get to cheat all day. So it's what works for somebody else may not work for you, but you have to figure out what's going to work for you and go with it.
Yeah, the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the time you're very good and 20% you can, kind of vary off. Intermittent fasting, I've been doing it for maybe 2 years now. I live just fine with 2 meals a day. We've just been so conditioned to eat so much. Very much like yourself, I stop eating around 5 or 6 and I don't eat till noon the next day and I'm fine. People ask how you do it. You're already fast. That's why they call it breakfast, right? You're breaking the fast
Yeah.
in the morning. You're already fast at night. Those just don't have anything till noon. There's been days where I only eat one meal a day, and it's not difficult, and we've just been so accustomed especially here in the US, there's just so many, bad food options that are quick and inexpensive and delicious, right?
Mhm.
So we have to do our
Yeah.
best to stay away from it. Mike Hansen, what motivates you?
That's a great question. Um, I think my kids motivate me. Um, I think I fall in the trap of worrying too much what other people think. I think
Mm,
that motivates me. It shouldn't, but I think mainly my motivation right now is to figure out how to free up some time. I have a freshman in high school, a sixth grade. My daughter's a freshman in high school, sixth grade boy, and then a third grade daughter. And just to be able to spend more time with them. Like right now, I coach their flag football teams just because it forces me. I love it. I used to say that all the time, just because it forced me to spend time with them. But I love it. I love spending time with them and all their friends, and I think that's the main motivator. And then um, I would like to I would like to play more golf. So
yeah.
so that's that main thing that motivates me, and just I think being a good person, and I got into this industry because I really enjoy helping people and watching them improve and so that's I think that's the main thing is just you know just being there for my kids and my wife and being a good person. So that's what it's all
That's got
about.
to be something with the flag football team. You must stretch them better than anyone have ever has. I mean, that must be great.
So what's funny is so there I have my son's fifth, sixth grade team. I've done his since he was in kindergarten. And then my daughter plays and she's been since kindergarten. She's in third grade now. And I don't ever warm them up because and people are like, well, you're the fitness guy. Why don't you? I said, these kids are 8 years old. They've been running around all day and I only get an hour with them for practice and we need to be running routes and plays. So it's not at that age they don't really need to stretch and warm up. But it's my son's getting in. He's 12, so he's hitting the puberty almost.
Mm.
So or he's gonna be 13, but so they're gonna start to need that warm up. But yeah, 7, 8 year olds they're constantly warm pretty much. So but yeah, it's we don't. I've just started with my son doing some athletic, some drills and stuff that we do with the juniors here at the gym. None of my kids have my daughter just started playing golf, but my son he wants to play it. He likes football, baseball, basketball, all the ball sports. So I think my 8 year old's going to take it up though. So there'll be a golfer there.
Plenty of time for golf. I coached my daughters in soccer when they were young, and I remember that 7, 8 range. And one of the girls would fall, right on their face, and you know come on, get up, keep going. And if everybody stares and says, "Are you okay?" then she'll start to cry. Come on, it's just
Oh,
like life. You fall down, you get back up, and they just get up and start charging again, and the
exactly.
parents, they love it. And at that age, they're so warm, they're warm, they're running around all day. They just want to have a little bit of structure in soccer and just continue that, activity. It's so important for them.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's huge, and we train a lot of juniors here, and it's it. Hate to see a 13 or 14-year-old come in and that's only played golf since they were 3 years old, and
Mm.
they're lopsided because
Oh,
golf's one of the
yes.
things where you do the exact same move over and over, and
Yes.
these kids are spending 5 6 hours on the range. So
Whoa.
and then they come to me at 14 or 15 with back pain and injuries, and then we got to try and so my advice to parents with kids or kids that you know play as many sports as possible, and then around 12, 13, 14, then choose
Mm.
your main and then spend all the time there. I've heard it once that nobody really cares who wins the 8-year-old championship
Championship.
except the parents, and
Acceptable.
the only reason the kid's happy is because the parent isn't mad
That's
at
right.
him. So
That's right. Yeah, they get to go
so
to somewhere to eat. Yeah, some ice
yeah.
cream or something. Yeah, that is very important. Extra sports. I always push soccer because it builds their legs. I'm a soccer player, and legs you got to use in every sport. But yeah, play multiple. I didn't start playing golf till into my mid to late 20s, and I'm empty. You mentioned playing more golf. I'm empty nest now, Mike, and it'll happen before you know it with you, and then you'll get plenty of time to play, and plenty more time. That's what I do now. How do you measure success?
That's another good question.
Thank you.
Um, measure success. I'll tell you how I used to measure it, making sure everybody's happy around me. Um,
People pleaser.
yes, very much so, to a fault. Um, I think, how do I measure success? I think it's being, that's a great, I don't measure it monetarily. I think having the time to do, I don't know. So I don't know why, my brother's an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. My dad had his own business. I think it just runs in our family, but I think having being able to do what I want is
Mm.
success. And sometimes I can't do what I want, but having the ability to do what I feel like I want to do. So I don't know.
Flexibility.
That's a good question. Yeah. Yeah.
Must be rewarding when you help some of these golfers too, by the way. They must be real thankful.
Yeah, I the other thing is it's hard to measure progress a lot of times. So we'll measure like
Mm,
how far you can turn your shoulders and how far you can do this. But you know, with weight loss, it's easy. You stand on a scale, you do some
right.
measurements, and with some people are hitting it. They they can swing faster, they can hit it farther, and they're actually improving their golf game. But it doesn't. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and I've had clients for years and years, and they're like, and we're able to that was something that we really looked into and said, how can we measure the success of our clients? How are they are they feeling better when they're on the course? Do they have more
Mm.
energy? They may not be shooting better. Are they able to turn further? I had one lady tell me that she knows she's getting stronger because she could hover over the toilet at the Angels game, and her legs didn't hurt anymore. I
Ah,
had one lady that said she used to have somebody carry her luggage when she'd visit her daughter, and now she can carry it herself. And so there's different things that, a golf thing is, people are like, one week they'll come in and they'll say, I played incredible. And then the next week I played awful. So
right.
I always take the credit when they play well, and it's their swing instructor's fault when they didn't play well.
Smart.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'll be 55 soon, and everybody wants to be longer, and I started increasing swing speed, and then next thing you know, Mike, it's affecting my irons, and I'm hitting it longer, but I'm less accurate. And this is I've got 95 mile an hour swing speed on my driver. That's it. And if I move it to 110, sure, sometimes I'll get longer, but I'll pull or push it. So I've turned into this kind of puncher golf where I get on greens more, but I own my game, and I like where it is, and there's always room for improvement. But I just think so many times these golfers just want to get more, want to get longer, want to get just don't forget to score and have fun.
Yes, yeah, that's the whole. Ever since Bryson came in 2020, and the bulking,
DeChambeau.
the yes,
Yeah.
Bryson DeChambeau, the bulking up and the swinging as fast as he can out of his shoes. It's definitely. I'm not complaining because it's definitely good for my business. But
Right.
you're right that I've heard it. The ball rolls a lot farther in the fairway than it does in the rough,
Yeah.
and that's the thing is people are chasing this distance that they're getting more injured. They're they're hitting it further out of bounds and forgetting that it's okay that the scorecard doesn't have pictures or videos on it, and that you can come up a little bit short and on the fairway, or you're not always the longest hitter in the group, but if you can score it, nobody cares. They they don't ask you how far you hit it on number 3 today. They ask you,
Should
what'd you
birdie it.
shoot? Yeah, or,
Yeah.
so I think you're right, and I think we'll see now. The PJ, they're talking about the flight reduced ball and
Mm.
all that stuff, and so I think chasing distance will go away a little bit um, with the older population.
Mm.
And if you look at the kids now, if you're not hitting a 300 in high school, you can't
So
compete.
far. They hit it so far. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
it's crazy, and
Yeah.
the colleges are hitting it further than the PGA Tour, and
Yes.
it's just
Yeah.
getting faster and faster, and which is a good thing. I don't know if we'll see the longevity of a lot of players, as we used to, but yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do. I have mixed feelings about the ball. They can't make the courses any longer than they already
Right.
have. So they can't make it any tighter. But you know, I think the older population that are playing, I don't think they need to worry about hitting it further. They need to worry about hitting it more consistently and having more consistent, repeatable swing that they can score with and not get injured.
In golf, it's not how far, it's how many.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
That's
for
keep
sure.
that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Hansen, what a great pleasure. I'm so glad you accepted this when we reached out. Really enjoyed our time together. How can we get in touch with you?
Every Hansen Fitness for Golf. It's on Instagram. Our YouTube channel is doing really well.
It's great.
I haven't really spent much time on it until lately, but it's good. So Hansen Fitness for Golf on all those, and then for juniors during 2020, I started a juniorgolffit.com just
Great.
to try and. There's so many I shouldn't say uneducated, but misinformed
Mm,
families that don't know what to do on the fitness side of with their young kids. So juniorgolffit.com is another one that what I started that and got it ball rolling, and then everybody started coming back into the gym after COVID. So I'm still working on it, but yeah, Hansen Fitness for Golf, and then or juniorgolffit.com.
make sure I put those all in the show notes. Yeah, there should be courses. You just mentioned parents. When I coached my daughters, the girls were great. One or two parents were not. They should have courses on these. I'm sure it's the same thing in golf, right? They're going to go on tour, and you're not. It's terrible.
It's every sport, yeah,
It's every sport.
yeah.
Yeah, it's every
Yeah,
sport. Yeah.
and here in Southern California, if you're, I learned that with my kids. If you started, not we started sports at 8. You couldn't play till you're 8. If you start at 8 now, you're behind the curve. You're 2 or
It's
3 years
crazy.
behind. So
And it's one sport a year. I mean, I
mm,
played 3 or 4, we still played kickball in the streets and baseball, and then we moved it around. But now every sport is all year. It's just,
yeah,
and money's got involved, which of course, changes everything. Mike Hansen, thank you again so much for your time. Next time I'm in Orange County, we'll connect and have a cup of coffee. I really appreciate your time.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. And it was fun.
You be well.
All right, thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information. The video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.